It's good to see you back in class. When I was a kid, I thought that people on television could see us, and I remember my mother explaining that to me, that they couldn't see us, but we could see them. And then one night, my father, who was an art professor, was on some PBS talk show, local show, and we sat there at home, and he was in the living room sitting on the couch. We're watching the TV, and there's my dad on the TV. And I kept looking back and forth. I was so confused how this works. So here we are. It's good to see you back in class again. And no, I can't really see you out there. That would be some, well, gosh, we do have technology to do that. Probably even through the internet, through a class. And I'm waiting for that kind of communication technology that you can see my face while we talk in a live class online, and I can look at my screen, a big screen like this, and see each one of you in your webcam, your faces there. I can see who's absent. And then when you want to make a comment or have a question, I can click on your pick, and you will appear on the screen for everybody else in the class to listen to and watch. And we can have some interesting mediated discussions that way. All right, we're diving into theories today, and we're going to stay in these theories until we're all the way through the class. So it may get a little monotonous. I'll say right up front here, each one of these theories can be valuable to you. Some more than others. You get to decide which. But they all have value, and they all will explain something about how the world works, especially in terms of communication. Today's theory is called Symbolic Interactionism. It's a little bit more hard to grasp, but I hope we can get a handle on it. And there's a number of similar theories, and this may be one of those that's like, well, when am I ever going to use that? Well, my gosh, if you're in the public relations world trying to shape the way people think and change their behaviors, you're going to use this one every day of your life. And the rest of you, even if you're not out there trying to change the world and shape the way people think and believe, you will be affected by this every day of your life as other people try to change the way you think and behave. All right, but before we get there, let's have a quick writing lesson. And we'll do about 6 or 8 of these up front in the semester, so you can write these essays the way I want to see them and get the idea of the structure of an essay in your mind so that you can write good essays for any class and for your bosses and co-workers once you're out there in the professional world. Okay, let's see. I think I need an arrow button here. Okay, introductions. What to say, what not to say? Yeah, let's start with what not to say. For this assignment, I decided to write about this thing here that happened. Don't start an essay that way, especially in a college class. You wouldn't write a proposal and present it before the board of your employer that says, the boss asked me to write up this proposal for a new product line, so here goes. That's not how you begin anything. The justification for why you write something has to come from the topic itself. So for the proposal at work, you could start out with, today in 2020, an intriguing opportunity stands before our organization if we are willing to, excuse me, that is not a virus, if we are willing to invest time and resources to fully explore this opportunity. For a school assignment, just start out with, I like to hear people start out with questions or stories. Questions are a good way to go here. Well, 3 things need to happen to do this. This is what you're supposed to do in an introduction. You want to get the reader's interest. And so you need something in that first line that hints at the topic and suggests that this is something intriguing. Keep that reader reading, and then we'll talk more about that later. 3 or 4 sentences to really engage the reader and show them the importance of the issue. Some issues are important all by themselves, and other issues you have to provide the initiative or the impetus there for somebody to get interested in it. A lot of these topics may be like that in this class, actually. Although, you know, good writers do find that angle that tells us something that we want to know more about. Okay, so in this case, you know, I could ask a question for this, especially this topic. You know, how is it that some stupid product out there becomes the hottest thing, it goes viral, and everybody just has to have one? You know, the marketing person's dream of success is to be able to do that each and every time. How does that happen? So there's the question we need to answer right there with getting the interest. You might start out with something like Twitter was a website that announced their presence about 10 years ago. And my first response to Twitter was, no way, nobody's going to say anything substantive in 20 words or less. This is just stupid. But what do I know? As Twitter continued, people started using it, and pretty soon important people were using it, and luminaries were using it, and then it seemed everybody had a Twitter account, and you're out of it if you don't have one. So I got a Twitter account, and I could actually tweet things now. So what did they do to make this possible? How did it come about that everybody needs a Twitter account, or at least needs to watch Twitter? Well, in what follows, and now we're into step 3 here. I'm going to describe this because I'm going to discuss. This essay will discuss. The following paragraphs will discuss the methods Twitter used in their marketing and promotional materials to convince the public that they needed to use this product. Does this make sense? Now you're ready to dive into the body of that essay of what Twitter did to make themselves indispensable to everybody. Okay, that's your quick writing lesson for the day. Get a reader's interest in that introduction. Ask the question that you've just got to answer, that this essay answers. Hopefully you can make it important with the prior sentences. And then tell your reader, and that's your thesis statement, what your essay is going to accomplish, how you're going to answer the question. We describe things, we discuss them, we can experiment and then explain. We can review what experts know about a topic. We can explain. I'm going to tell you a few stories about how I succeeded in the world of business. Listen and learn. That's a thesis statement. All right, let's get into our theory now, symbolic interactionism. But just prior to that theory, I'm not sure I think we need to learn this material. It's the traditions, 7 traditions of research. We talked at length last week in my lectures about the humanistic approach to studying things and the scientific approach. For all practical purposes, I think that's as much as you need to know. However, our textbook presents this, and I just want to at least tip my hat to these ideas, because if you decide to become a teacher, it will probably mean more to you then. 7 different research traditions. Now, you could neatly divide these into, these are humanistic and these are scientific. The rhetorical tradition, how do people persuade one another, that's humanistic. Semiotic tradition, the semiotic tradition, how we use language and how language shapes the reality we live in by the words that we use to encapsulate our ideas. That one's kind of in between. You can get scientific with that to a great degree. Yet there's also a lot of the humanistic approach to it. The phenomenological perspective. In this theory, I've got these highlighted in yellow because the theory today, symbolic interactionism, is kind of phenomenological, but also from this semiotic tradition. Phenomenological, how people look at things and activities, and they are totally constructed and created by the people, and they wouldn't even exist if the people weren't there to make them exist. Phenomenon, that's what a phenomenon is. The cybernetics tradition, I'm a little less familiar with this one, but I would look at systems theory. Every aspect of our lives, there's a system with interconnected parts at work, and it's all functioning and operating, and every part affects another part. I am a proponent of this theory in organizational communication. Socio-psychological would be how the inner workings of the brain, the psychological part, interact with people around us, the sociological part. Sociocultural would be that sociological part interacting in a larger culture, and that intersection between culture and sociology. Sociology helps us to understand culture. Then the critical tradition is, this is wrong, we need to change it, we need to dig up and understand the reasons why it's wrong before we can even know the right way to move forward. A lot of that going on in the past 4 to 6 years, especially with a brand new critique of evil capitalism and rich people and all the power brokers and all that, and we need a more socialistic form of government and form of financial systems. And some current politicians today, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, there's two of the leading socialist politicians around there. But this is a theory, this is building, and all of us are going to be staring us straight in the face within 12 years probably. Okay, those 7 traditions, that's them in a nutshell. That may be something you never use, but if you get deep into your field, you'll be immersed in one of them, and just recognize that. This is what philosophers talk about. This is what people talk about at academic conferences. All right, on to our theory here. Well, first, I'm going to go back to that scientist versus the humanist here. It can also be couched as essentialism. There are essences. No, scientist is right hand, right? There are essences. There are real things we can measure. We can explain, predict, and control. And that's how we understand the world, by knowing the essence of all its parts. The constructionist says, we create all these parts. It's all socially constructed. You and I agree that this is the best way to use something like money. We print it on paper. And if we need more of it, we print more of it, instead of digging it out of the ground. Well, that's a social constructionist perspective. The other economists would say, no, that money you dig out of the ground, gold and silver, palladium, platinum, these valuable metals, those are really money, and they're limited. You have two philosophical ways of looking at the world that are not fighting one another, but let's just say they're on a teeter-totter of some sort. There's a balance, or I don't know. So I've got this little graph at the bottom of the screen there. What are the essences of things? I'm about 10% social constructionist. I am not going to dismiss science. It's real. Things do have essences. But what we do with those, where those, the constructionist part of it, I'm probably 90% that. Most of the things we deal with every day, and I'm not a rocket scientist where I am dealing with 90% essences. I study humans and I study persuasion, and that is so socially constructed. There is no hard, fast biological rule that says if you say these words in just the right way, these people will do what you want. Even if I point a gun at you and say, move, or I will shoot you, and people move, that's not because there's some essence within them. They've made a rational choice that I don't want to get shot. I like living, and maybe I'll get through this thing. Maybe I'll get through this class with this teacher that threatens with F's all the time. So think of it for yourself. Are you, where's your balance? Are you 50-50? People from the scientific world are probably 60 to 70% essences are the critical thing, and people from the humanistic world are probably 60 to 70 to 90%. Some are 100%. I've met some professors, 100% social constructionist. They could care less about the sciences. Humans decide. But I think if you dug into their mind a little bit, you'd find that, yeah, they know that if you step off a building at the 2nd floor, you're going to fall and hit the ground pretty hard because of the law of gravity. So, yeah, it's kind of in their little world, they're 100%. Okay, think about who you are, where you come from, and it's just handy to know that. And then you won't be overly persuaded by people that say it's all socially constructed, or it's all comes from your biology, in the sense of like this: are you born this way? Are you shaped this way? Did you choose? You chose this way. Or did people persuade you to be this way? And maybe you didn't even see the persuasion happening. You just one day decided, yeah, your subconscious figured it all out. These are fair questions, and they're important questions in certain realms of life. All right, symbolic interactionism. I'll try to be fast here with the remaining 15 slides. George Herbert Mead, I got a typo there, was the researcher here that really, he never wrote about it. It was his disciples, his graduate students that worked with him closely, that after his death realized he never wrote anything down. This is great stuff. And they kind of compiled all his theories into a book. In essence, it's a frame of reference for understanding two things: how people interact with one another to create a symbolic world. When we say a symbolic world, we mean a world where the most important things in our life are symbols, like words. People are linguistic. Language is how we function. So that's what we talk about in a symbolic world. And our symbols have often as much or more power to shape us than the actual things do. Why am I afraid of coyotes out in the wilderness? Oh, they eat people. They drop anvils on you from on top of the cliff. No, it's the symbolism of the coyote. It's because maybe in many cultures they are an omen of something, and you better look around you and pay attention. A coyote stops and stares at you. You better pay attention to what's happening, because there's a spirit in that coyote that knows something about your future and is giving you a little warning here. I've got a story on that, but we'll save it. The second thing is how these worlds, these symbolic worlds, shape the individual behavior. So it's a kind of a circular process here. I think that takes us to the next slide. Yeah. So the symbolic world, we agree that something is true, and then we talk about it, and then we decide, therefore, this is how we will act or behave. This is what we're going to do about it. And then the discourse comes back around, yes, we agree that this is true. Yeah, Bitcoin, for an example. First time I've heard of Bitcoin, oh, it was selling for $100 a coin. And I'm thinking, what? How can you have computer code that is unique? Oh, I sort of get it. Bitcoin, but I don't know. I just don't trust having that. It's like a flash drive, your Bitcoin wallet, and your coins are on there, and you can have $1,000 on that flash drive. What if you lose it? Yeah, that's a problem. But it's a thing. They're finite. You can't just create millions of them. And each one they mine and create. And they used metal metaphors to help us understand what a Bitcoin was. They have nothing to do with metals, precious metals. You don't mine them. Computers run through a sequence of codes and create the unique one when it finds one, and you just do it long enough and you get one, kind of just like mining. Keep digging in the right place, you get how many grams per ton of rock. You just got to go through that many tons of rock to get what you want. So these things were created, and then everybody wanted them as we decided how we're going to behave about them. Yes, they are unique. Yes, you can make financial transactions around the world with these. Yes, you can hide your money in Bitcoins. And so we created them, and then we started using them. And they didn't even exist prior to, what, about 2008. You heard the story about the guy that had a whole bunch of them on his computer, and they were worth 1 penny each. And he took the hard drive out of his computer when he upgraded to a new computer, and he had them all on the hard drive. And then he broke up with his girlfriend. His girlfriend threw all his junk out in the trash. He spent a long time out in the dump near his town, this happened in England, looking for that hard drive because the Bitcoins were worth well over $1,000 each at that point. All right, symbolic interactionism made Bitcoin possible. It's real. It's a sociological theory. Herbert Mead was a sociologist. where we create the rules for interaction and living. There's nothing essential about them. In one culture, you kiss somebody on the cheek, you plant it right there, plant it on the other cheek, you kiss them on the lips. That's your greeting. In another culture, you do the air kiss off to the side of their face, and that's the greeting. In another culture, you shake hands, and you might give a quick hug where just your shoulders touch a little bit. Are these essences? No. We create these rules. They're socially constructed. They're symbolic also, so this is why the semiotics gets into this tradition. We create things that are literally made of symbols, and they're ideas, and those ideas program our brains to act. This theory is interpretive, and interpretive hermeneutic is another word for interpretive. Hermeneutics comes from the Greek god Hermes, who brought messages to people with his little winged feet and the little wings on his hat. And he would come and he would give you a message. Problem was, Hermes was a trickster. And yes, the message was true, literally, but you had to interpret it. What does this mean? Interpretation. And there's so many things in life we've got to interpret. Ah, she smiled at me. What does that mean? Is this my true love? Well, we've got to interpret that smile. Maybe she just, you know, is being polite and smiles at everybody. Watch her a while, see if she smiles at everybody. It may be all it is. You've got to interpret all messages. This is what we mean by an interpretive theory. Symbolic interaction is that way. All right. We create a symbolic world, and that world shapes our individual behavior. Who creates this world? Well, you and I do. We can create it right here in this class. I've created it with a grading policy that allows you to turn in things late. That greatly affects your behavior. Some of my colleagues don't allow you to turn things in 1 minute late, and if you try to submit that online assignment 1 minute after the deadline, BB Learn will kick it right back at you. You and I create that, and you and your other professors create those deadlines. You push back on that professor hard enough with complaints to their department chair immediately. Got to catch them in the act, you know. You don't do it in the evaluations at the end of the year. That'll change it for other people, but not you this semester. You and I create the world. A group of friends can create this. 25 students in your class all write an email to the department chair complaining about a grading policy. Not fair. Too many of us, there's too much going on in our lives. We have a larger effect then. You and I, just a limited effect. You and I agree on something. It's just my class. A group of friends with the department chair, aha, now maybe a policy for a whole department can come down that says, here is our late policy, and it's much more reasonable than we would have had. But the other way, and this is probably the more interesting way, and it's kind of in my world of rhetoric, mediated messages. Messages come to you from people you don't know, through mass media. You get it all now, TV, radio, not so much anymore. Online, a lot of stuff comes online. Hey, even in-person speeches, people go to political speeches, but most of it's happening online rather than the in-person mass media. That's not as common anymore. And these have powerful effects on large groups of people. When some eloquent person says, here is how it is, and explains it in words that just makes sense. I think they're right. And it's beautiful because it rhymed. That's getting really into the dark side of rhetoric there, when you use sneaky tricks to symbolically create an idea or a thing and then put it out there to the world, and then they accept it as true, but you have been devious. Beware of marketing campaigns. Beware of public relations. It's not all about just telling the truth about your product. It's about getting you to act on it. And not all PR and marketing people are ethical. Most of you are, I am sure. Okay, mediated messages, very powerful effect with symbolic interactionism. Some examples before we finish this off. Consumerism, I've used a couple already. Ad campaign, persuade you, you gotta have this car, man, they are just too cool. And the salesman tells you how good you look in that car right there. And you say, I'll buy it, I want it. Yeah, that happened to me at age 19. I drove out in that brand new El Camino, and it was a cool car. I guess I looked good in it, I don't know. Sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's not, and you got a salesman fooling you. Symbolic interactionism. Okay, love that old ad, 7-Up. Right there, red and green bottle. Get that. We have the youngest customers in the business. Yeah, people, yeah, gosh, I just can't imagine giving your baby soda like that to get him to quiet down. Pretty soon they're a sugar addict before you knew it. That's exactly what 7-Up wanted. They were devious. Get the baby to stop crying with our product. And then, a little more sophisticated ad, a little more modern ad. The guy with the green hair with the red swash through it. The Tanqueray. Is that a... I can't remember what product that is, imported. Is it gin? So, yeah, be like me. I'm cool. And a lot of products just want you to feel something, and next time you see that product in the store, it stands out, because maybe you thought this guy was good looking, or it certainly was. If you're not attracted to him, you want to be like him because you think he is attractive and might attract the kind of people you want. So, somewhere in there, we want to be like him. And we remember the product, and that's all that counts in marketing, is that you remember the product. Even if some weird thing got you to remember it, that works. Symbolic interactionism in action here. Two people talk, reviewing this again. The President of the United States, the POTUS, is bad. And we need to take action for change, and you agree on that. A whole bunch of people that talk. You go to a community meeting and somebody from Antifa is there explaining how the world works to you, and yeah, I'm on with you, I'm right with you there. You do agree. And then somebody goes out, pulls a hat off a customer at a fast food restaurant and throws a drink in his face. Be careful here, we can construct the wrong things. I'm all for any political group in this country sharing what they believe, but when we cross the line and start committing violent acts, which are intended to be symbolic to the larger public, they're mass media acts, and it's absolutely what Antifa wanted, was to get this on video and have it go viral, the guy throwing a drink in the guy's face. He didn't hurt the guy throwing a drink in his face. It's just a really bad insult. And yeah, it could have turned into a big fight. But it gets publicity, it gets the message out there, and people start thinking about the message. And in this case, we're socially constructing hate, where hate didn't exist. Disagreement existed, and we settled things at the polls. But more and more, we're getting hate. The politicians are flaming this up too, with creating words like deplorables. Is this person really deplorable? What did they did that would cause us to deplore them? They voted for the wrong person? You know, you sit down and have a beer with that person, I think you'd find they're very reasonable, though you still disagree on a few things. Beware of hate and the social construction of hate out there. So, symbolic interactionism, very active these days. Inclusion, exclusion. Competence or incompetence. Acceptance to rejection. It creates these concepts. They are socially constructed. And we want to include everybody. We want to find that competent area that every person has and make sure they are working within their realm of competence. Don't give them a job they fail at. And we want to accept everybody rather than reject them all. So that's symbolic interactionism at work. It's probably the primary theory that can explain hatred, racism, colonialism. You know, why was it even allowed to exist for all these centuries? And, you know, it explains economics. It's a deep theory. It explains a lot of things. That's one of the problems with it. Well, here's another explanation. It's a frame of reference to understand how people interact. Okay, the book, I know, repeats itself over and over with these kinds of phrases. Problems of the theory, though. It lacks systematicity. These are critiques that come from scientists. I'm all for this theory. It's a very powerful and explanatory theory. I have no problems at all. But systematic. Yeah, you kind of have to put the puzzle together here a little bit. That's why I'm jumping around all over in the lecture, trying to get you the big picture pieces pulled in so it starts to come out of the fog for you. It's not testable. We can't run an experiment to go see if it works. Well, I don't know. Measuring the unmeasurable? A number of YouTube videos on about that out there, actually. Yeah, if you're clever about how you measure something. So, marketing does this all the time. Here's our product. We want people to believe it and to buy it. Which messages can we use that help people believe and cause them to want to buy? And they can measure how these messages work. And they can look at the words. Semiotics helps here. The actual words and symbols used in the ad. And this one is more effective than that one. So yeah, in a way, it can be measured, but it's difficult, it's time-consuming, it's expensive. Marketing companies have the money to measure these kinds of things. College professors don't. All they can do is ask 80 college sophomores taking a common theory class to take a survey for them and maybe interview another 30 of them to try to prove something's true, where a marketing company... I've got a friend who runs a company that does surveys, marketing surveys, political surveys, and he tries to interview or get information from at least, what did he say? Probably 5,000 people, and it costs you $30,000 if you want to hire him to get a public opinion survey about your product. That's the cost that college professors don't have the money to get into unless you're studying something on the cutting edge of the hard sciences where there's funding and jobs waiting for the students. But, you know, the social sciences, it's hard to get money to study and measure something like this. So, yeah, unmeasurable, no, I don't think so. That one kind of falls by the wayside. You can measure it. But you also have to use the humanistic methods that we've talked about in the prior lectures. All right, thanks for your patience and listening to this one. Many of the other theories are going to be a little easier to grasp than this one was. You have a great week, and we'll talk to you in our next essay coming right up.